They say if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. But they never tell you what making it actually costs. My name is Sophia. 6 months ago, I walked into the lobby of Vanguard Analytics on Fifth Avenue wearing a suit that cost more than my rent. I was 24, a math prodigy from a small town, and I had just been hired as a junior financial analyst. To the outside world, I was the success story. To me, I was just trying to survive the Shark Tank. Vanguard wasn't just a company, it was an empire. At the top of that empire was Marcus Thorne. He was the kind of CEO who appeared on the cover of Forbes every other year, a visionary, a ghost, and a god. But here was the weird part, in my first 3 months, I never actually saw him. Mr. Thorne is in London, my supervisor, Julian, would say with a stiff smile. Or, Mr. Thorne is overseeing the Tokyo merger. Every morning, the entire firm received a direct message from the desk of Marcus Thorne. It was a video clip, usually 30 seconds long, played on the massive LED screens in the lobby. He would talk about synergy, disruption, and the future of capital. He looked healthy, tan, and sharp. But when you're a math person like me, you don't just see the face. You see the patterns. It started on a rainy Tuesday. I was tasked with reconciling the executive travel expenses, a boring job they gave to the newbies. I was looking at the private jet logs for the Tokyo trip. According to the tail number, the Gulfstream G650 had been sitting in a hangar in Teterboro, New Jersey, for the last 6 weeks. It hadn't moved an inch. My heart did a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. If the plane was in Jersey, how was Marcus Thorne in Tokyo? I pulled up the morning video from the lobby servers. I ran it through a basic pixel density filter I'd built back in college. On the screen, Thorne's face was perfect. He was smiling. But as I slowed the frame rate down to 0.05%, the edges of his jawline began to vibrate. It was subtle, the kind of microscopic jitter you only see in high-end neural rendering. It wasn't a man. It was a digital mask. Sophia? I jumped, nearly knocking my coffee over. Julian was standing right behind me, his shadow stretching across my desk. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at my monitor. His eyes were cold, like 2 chips of blue glass. That's a very sophisticated filter for a junior analyst to be playing with, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent a chill down my spine. Don't you have spreadsheets to finish? I was just checking the resolution for the presentation, Julian, I lied, my voice trembling just enough to show him I was scared. The CEO is a very busy man, Sophia. He doesn't like people looking too closely at him. It's better for your career if you keep your eyes on the numbers, not the man. He walked away, but I felt his gaze on me for the rest of the day. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed late, pretending to work, but my mind was racing. If Marcus Thorne wasn't in Tokyo, and he wasn't in London, where was he? And more importantly, who was signing the $50 million wire transfers that were leaving the company's accounts every Friday? I realized then that I wasn't working for a prestigious investment firm. I was working inside a high-tech funeral parlor. The CEO was a ghost, and the people running the show were using his digital corpse to bleed the investors dry. I looked at the exit sign at the end of the hall. I should have run. I should have walked out of that glass tower and never looked back. But as I opened the next encrypted file, I saw a name that stopped my breath. It was my father's small pension fund, one of the thousands of minor accounts Vanguard was currently rebalancing. They weren't just stealing from the rich. They were stealing from everyone. And if I left now, I'd be the perfect scapegoat to leave behind when the building finally burned down. The air in the office felt thinner the next morning. You know that feeling when you're being watched, but you can't see the eyes? That was my Wednesday. Every time a colleague laughed or a printer whirred, I flinched. I kept my head down, staring at my dual monitors, pretending to be the diligent little analyst they expected. But underneath my open Excel sheets, I had a hidden window running a deep packet inspection on the internal server. I needed to know where the CEO's messages were actually being uploaded from. If they weren't coming from a satellite feed in London or Tokyo, they were coming from somewhere inside the building. Around 2 p.m., a notification flashed. A new daily briefing was being uploaded to the company intranet for the evening shift. I traced the signal. It didn't come from the PR department on the 10th floor. It originated from the 42nd floor, the restricted access level. That was the server suite, a place only the CTO and the executive board could enter. Sophia, my office. Now. Julian's voice over the intercom sounded like a blade scraping on stone. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stood up. I took a deep breath, smoothed my skirt, and walked toward the corner office. Julian was sitting behind a mahogany desk that looked like it cost more than my college tuition. Next to him stood Sarah, the head of IT. She was a woman in her late 30s with hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She didn't look like a tech geek, she looked like a soldier. We noticed some unusual activity on your terminal, Sophia, Julian said, not looking up from his tablet. A lot of pings to the restricted 42nd floor server. Care to explain why a junior analyst is so interested in our hardware? I had rehearsed this. I had to play the naive girl card. I'm so sorry, Julian. My terminal was lagging on the market projections, and I thought I could manually reroute my connection to a faster node. I read about it in a tech forum. Did I break something? I looked at him with wide, worried eyes. I let my hands shake just a little. Sarah leaned in, her eyes narrowing. You're a math major, Sophia. You should know that's not how enterprise servers work. I just wanted to finish the report on time, I stammered. I didn't want to disappoint you. Julian looked at Sarah. A silent conversation passed between them. For a moment, I thought they were going to fire me right there, or worse. Then, Julian's face softened into a fake, terrifying smile. Enthusiasm is good, Sophia. But curiosity? Curiosity can be dangerous in a place like this. Go back to your desk. And stay off the internal architecture. I nodded quickly and hurried out. But as I passed the glass partition, I saw Sarah pull out a burner phone. She wasn't using the company line. That was the confirmation I needed. This wasn't just a corporate secret, this was a criminal enterprise. That night, I waited until the cleaning crew arrived at 9 p.m. I knew the security guards took their break at 9:15. I slipped into the stairwell, my pulse drumming in my ears. I didn't take the elevator, elevators leave logs. I climbed 6 flights of stairs to the 42nd floor. My keycard shouldn't have worked, but I had borrowed Julian's digital signature from a PDF he sent me earlier and cloned it onto a blank card using a cheap writer I'd bought in Chinatown. Beep. The light turned green. The 42nd floor was freezing. The hum of the servers was a constant, low-frequency roar. I moved through the dark rows of blinking blue and green lights until I found the media rendering station. There it was. On a massive high-definition monitor, I saw Marcus Thorne. But it was just his head, floating in a grid of golden lines. A software program was running a vocal synthesis script. A text box on the side read, "The Q3 dividends will be delayed due to European market volatility." I clicked on the source files folder. My breath hitched. There were hundreds of hours of Thorne's past speeches, chopped into millisecond fragments. But then I found a subfolder titled Final_Asset. I opened it. It wasn't a video of a speech. It was a digital scan of a death certificate. Marcus Thorne. Deceased. 6 months ago. Cause of death, massive heart attack. Location, private island, Bahamas. They had buried him in secret. They had hidden his death so the stock price wouldn't crash, and they'd been using his AI ghost to authorize the theft of billions. Suddenly, the lights in the room swung on. It's a masterpiece, isn't it? I spun around. Julian was leaning against the doorframe, a glass of scotch in his hand. He wasn't angry. He looked proud. Behind him stood 2 large men in dark suits, security, but not the kind that watches the front desk. These were the kind of men you hire to make problems go away. The real Marcus Thorne was a greedy, old-fashioned fool, Julian said, walking toward me. The digital Marcus? He's perfect. He never gets tired. He never makes mistakes. And most importantly, he does exactly what I tell him to do. He stopped inches from me. The smell of expensive cologne and alcohol was suffocating. Now, Sophia. You're very smart. Too smart to be a junior analyst. So, I have a question for you. Do you want to be the girl who went to the police and accidentally fell off a subway platform tomorrow morning? Or do you want to be a multimillionaire? He held out a hand. Because we're about to move $500 million out of this company, and I think you're just the person to help us hide the digital trail. I looked at his hand, then at the digital ghost of Thorne on the screen. My life as I knew it was over. I was standing in the middle of the biggest fraud in U.S. history, and the exit doors were locked. I stared at Julian's outstretched hand. In the sterile, blue light of the server room, his skin looked like pale marble. My mind was screaming run, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of Manhattan twinkled like a sea of diamonds, indifferent to the girl trapped on the 42nd floor. 500 million? I whispered, my voice cracking. At least, Julian said, his smile widening. It wasn't a friendly smile, it was the look of a predator who had just cornered a rabbit. The digital Marcus is going to announce a massive, secret acquisition of a tech startup in the Cayman Islands. The money will move through 12 different shell companies before the SEC even finishes their morning coffee. By the time anyone realizes the startup doesn't exist, the money will be converted into untraceable cryptocurrency. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, seductive purr. And you, Sophia, you're going to write the obfuscation code. You're going to make sure the digital paper trail looks like a maze that leads to nowhere. In exchange, $5 million will be deposited into an offshore account in your name. You can walk away. Go to Paris, Bali, wherever. You'll never have to look at a spreadsheet again. Sarah, the IT head, stepped forward from the shadows. She held a tablet in her hand. We know about your father, Sophia. We know his pension is tied up in the rebalancing we're doing. If you help us, we can ensure his account is protected. If you don't. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. They had researched me. They knew my leverage. In the US corporate world, everyone is just a number, and they had found the exact number it took to break me. I need to think, I said, trying to regain some shred of composure. You have until tomorrow morning, Julian said, retracting his hand. The announcement goes live at 9 a.m. If you're at your desk by 8 o'clock, I'll know you're on the team. If you're not, well, New York is a dangerous city for a girl who knows too much. The two security guards stepped aside, clearing a path to the exit. I didn't look back. I ran to the elevator, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I didn't stop until I was out on the street, the cold night air hitting my face like a slap. I walked for hours. I ended up in a small, 24-hour diner in Queens, sitting in a cracked vinyl booth with a cup of coffee I didn't drink. I looked at the people around me, the night shift workers, the tired cab drivers. They were all working for a piece of the American dream, unaware that people like Julian were turning that dream into a nightmare. If I went to the FBI now, Julian would know. He probably had the building's exits monitored. He probably had my phone tapped. In the US, a whistleblower is a hero in the movies, but in reality, they usually end up broke, blacklisted, or worse. Julian had enough power to frame me for the entire fraud before I could even finish my statement. But if I stayed, I'd be a criminal. A wealthy criminal, but a criminal nonetheless. I pulled out my laptop and connected to the diner's public Wi-Fi through 3 different VPNs. I looked at the code for the digital Marcus. It was brilliant, really. It used a specific type of generative adversarial network, GAN, to mimic Thorne's facial muscles. As I stared at the golden lines of the AI's facial structure, a thought hit me. Julian thought he was the puppet master. He thought he controlled the ghost. But code is logical. It follows rules. And every piece of code has a backdoor. If I was going to survive this, I couldn't just be a witness, and I couldn't just be a thief. I had to be the one holding the remote. I spent the rest of the night coding. My fingers flew across the keys, fueled by adrenaline and a desperate kind of courage. I wasn't just building the obfuscation code Julian wanted. I was building a dead man's switch. I was creating a hidden script that would trigger if the $500 million was moved, but instead of hiding the trail, it would broadcast the evidence of the fraud to every major news outlet and the SEC simultaneously. But there was a catch. To make the script work, I had to be inside the Vanguard network during the transfer. I had to walk back into the lion's den. At 7:45 a.m., I stood in front of the Vanguard Analytics building. The sun was rising, reflecting off the glass walls, making the tower look like it was made of solid gold. I took a deep breath, adjusted my blazer, and scanned my badge. Beep. The light turned green. I walked through the lobby, past the giant screens where the ghost of Marcus Thorne was already warming up for his 9 a.m. announcement. I sat down at my desk. A minute later, my internal messenger blinked. It was Julian. Glad to see you're a team player, Sophia. The credentials for the Cayman account are in your private folder. Get to work. I looked at the folder. Inside was the architecture for the $500 million heist. I started typing. I had 60 minutes to save my life, or lose it forever. The next 4 hours were a blur of green text and cold sweat. I wasn't just Sophia the analyst anymore, I was a digital architect building a fortress around a lie. Julian and Sarah were hovering, not physically, but I could feel their presence in the network. Every few minutes, a ping from the 42nd floor would hit my terminal, checking my progress. The plan was sophisticated. They weren't just moving cash, they were using layering, a classic money laundering technique, but at warp speed. The placement, moving the acquisition funds into a legitimate-looking escrow account. The layering, bouncing that money through high-frequency trades and shell companies in Delaware, Ireland, and finally, the Cayman Islands. The integration, cleaning the money by purchasing the fake tech startup. How's the obfuscation coming, Sophia? Julian's voice came through my headset. He was watching my screen remotely. I'm nesting the transaction hashes inside encrypted metadata packets, I said, my voice steady, though my palms were damp. Even if the SEC flags the volume, they won't be able to see the destination. It'll look like a routine server maintenance cost. Good girl, he whispered. 30 minutes until the ghost goes live. While I talked, my left hand was busy on a secondary, hidden keyboard under my desk. I was rewriting the smart contract they were using for the final crypto conversion. I wasn't just hiding the money, I was tagging every single dollar with a digital watermark, a microscopic piece of code that would scream fraud the moment it touched a public blockchain. But I had a bigger problem. Sarah, the IT head, was smart. She had installed a watchdog program on my system. If I tried to send an email to the FBI or even save a file to a USB drive, an alarm would trigger on her desk. I had to be more creative. I remembered the ghost software I had seen on the 42nd floor. It used a specific frequency to sync the AI's lips with the audio. I realized that if I could inject a tiny bit of noise into that frequency, I could use the CEO's own broadcast to transmit data. I began to upload my evidence, the death certificate, the logs of the fake flights, and the wire transfer records, into the video file of the ghost. I wasn't sending it to the police, I was hiding it inside the CEO's face. It was steganography, hiding data in plain sight. Sophia, Sarah's voice crackled in my ear. Why is the rendering bitrate fluctuating on the CEO's video feed? My heart stopped. I had been too greedy with the data. It's the encryption overhead, I lied, my fingers flying to smooth out the code. The packets are heavy. I'm adjusting the compression now. Do it fast, she snapped. We go live in 10 minutes. I looked around the office. People were grabbing coffee, chatting about their weekend plans, completely unaware that the girl in the cubicle next to them was currently helping to steal $500 million, or trying to stop it. I saw Julian walk onto the floor. He was wearing a celebratory expression. He stopped by my desk and leaned down. "The Cayman account is ready. As soon as Thorne finishes his speech, hit the execute key. Once the transfer is verified, your $5 million will be released." He handed me a small, encrypted key fob. "This is your exit ticket, Sophia. Don't blink." I stared at the execute button on my screen. This was the point of no return. In the US, the law doesn't care if you were forced to help. If you hit that button, you're an accomplice. But my dead man's switch was ready. The moment I hit execute, the money would move, but the ghost would also reveal the truth. The video feed wouldn't just play in our lobby. I had bypassed the internal router to broadcast it to the Vanguard Global YouTube channel and the Bloomberg terminal feed. The clock on the wall ticked to 9 a.m. Across the office, the giant LED screens flickered to life. The ghost of Marcus Thorne appeared, looking regal and powerful in his virtual boardroom. "Good morning, Team Vanguard," the AI voice boomed. "Do it," Julian hissed in my ear. My finger hovered over the key. I wasn't just Sophia from a small town anymore. I was the person who was about to crash a multi-billion-dollar empire. I closed my eyes for a split second, thought of my father's pension, and slammed my finger down on the execute key. The screen turned a blinding white as the data began to scream across the Atlantic. The moment my finger hit the execute key, the world seemed to slow down. On my screen, a progress bar appeared: 0%, 15%, 42%. Each percentage represented tens of millions of dollars leaping across oceans, vanishing from legitimate accounts and reappearing in the shadows of the Cayman Islands. "It's moving," Sarah whispered from the IT station, her voice filled with a mix of awe and greed. On the massive lobby screens, the ghost of Marcus Thorne began his rehearsed speech. "Today, we redefine the future of Vanguard," the digital voice echoed. But as the transfer bar hit 80%, I initiated my hidden script, the backdoor reveal. Suddenly, the video feed of Thorne began to glitch. It wasn't the subtle jitter I had seen before, it was a violent, digital disintegration. The tan skin of the CEO's face started to peel away in pixels, revealing the golden wireframe underneath. "What the hell is that?" Julian shouted, stepping toward my monitor. "Sophia. What's happening to the feed?" It's a server overload." I shouted back, my heart feeling like it was going to burst through my ribs. "The encryption is too heavy for the broadcast bandwidth. I'm trying to stabilize it." But I wasn't stabilizing anything. I was accelerating the collapse. At 95%, the audio changed. The AI didn't speak about synergy anymore. My script had swapped the audio file. Thorne's digital mouth began to move, but the voice that came out was a recording I had found in the deep archives, a clip of the real Marcus Thorne, months before he died, arguing with Julian about the missing funds. "You're stealing from the clients, Julian. I'll see you in federal prison before I let you ruin this firm." The entire office went silent. Hundreds of employees froze, coffee cups halfway to their mouths, staring at the screens. Julian's face went from triumph to a ghostly, pale white. "Shut it down. Pull the plug." Julian screamed at Sarah. Sarah scrambled, her fingers flying across her keyboard, but I had locked her out. I had used a logic bomb, a piece of code that would keep the system running in an infinite loop, ignoring any stop commands unless they came from my terminal. The progress bar hit 100%. The money was gone. But at that exact millisecond, my dead man's switch fired. A massive encrypted file, containing every fake flight log, the death certificate, and the real-time tracking of the $500 million, was blasted to the SEC, the FBI, and the New York Times. "You little brat," Julian hissed. He wasn't looking at the screens anymore. He was looking at me. The mask of the sophisticated executive had fallen. He looked like a cornered animal. "You just killed yourself." He lunged toward me, but I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag, containing the encrypted key fob and my laptop, and dived under the desk. I kicked the power strip to the main server hub, causing a shower of sparks that momentarily blinded Julian. "Security! Get her!" Sarah yelled. The 2 guards from the 42nd floor appeared at the end of the aisle. I knew the building's layout. I had spent weeks studying the fire escape maps. I didn't head for the elevators, they would be locked down. I ran toward the service kitchen. I burst through the swinging doors, slipping on the tile as the guards' heavy boots thudded behind me. I reached the service elevator, the one used for trash and catering. I slammed the down button, but it was too slow. "There she is," one of the guards shouted, reaching for his holster. In the US, corporate offices are designed to be open and transparent, but in reality, they are mazes of glass and steel. I threw a stack of heavy metal trays onto the floor behind me, creating a deafening crash and a tripping hazard. I didn't wait for the elevator. I dived into the laundry chute, a vertical tunnel used for linens. It was a 40-foot drop into a bin of dirty towels on the basement level. I hit the pile of laundry with a bone-jarring thud. My head spun, and my shoulder screamed in pain, but I was alive. I scrambled out of the bin, my clothes covered in dust and detergent. Above me, I could hear the sirens. Not one, not two, but dozens. The FBI didn't just get the email, they had been waiting for a lead this big for months. The NYPD was already cordoning off the block. But I wasn't safe yet. Julian's private security wasn't bound by the law, and they knew that if they caught me before the FBI did, they could still get the key fob, the only thing that could unlock the $500 million in the Cayman accounts. I pushed open the heavy steel door to the underground parking garage. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust and damp concrete. I saw my old, beat-up Honda in the distance. Then, I heard the click of a gun being cocked. "The key, Sophia," Julian said, stepping out from behind a concrete pillar. He was disheveled, his expensive suit torn, and his eyes filled with a terrifying madness. "Give me the key, and I might let you leave the city." I stood my ground, clutching my bag. "It's over, Julian. The FBI is upstairs. The whole world knows Marcus Thorne is a ghost. The world knows what I tell them," he snarled, stepping closer. "But they don't have the money." "I do. Or I will, once you give me that fob." The sirens were getting louder, echoing down into the garage. It was a standoff in the dark, beneath the heart of the city that never sleeps. The silence in the garage was heavy, broken only by the distant, rhythmic wail of sirens and the drip of water from a nearby pipe. Julian's hand was steady, the barrel of the pistol pointed directly at my chest. In his eyes, I didn't see a businessman anymore. I saw the hollow desperation of a man who had lost his empire and was willing to burn everything else down with him. "You think you're a hero, Sophia?" Julian sneered, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "You're just a thief who got cold feet. Give me the fob. Now." I gripped the strap of my bag. My mind was racing, calculating the distance between us. "The FBI has the logs, Julian. Even if you get the money, there's nowhere on earth you can spend it. Every intelligence agency in the world is watching those accounts now." "Then I'll disappear," he shouted. "Just like Marcus." He stepped forward, but his eyes flickered for a second toward the garage entrance. That was my opening. I didn't run away, I ran at him. As a math major, I knew about trajectories and force. I swung my heavy laptop bag with everything I had. The corner of the bag caught his wrist just as he fired. The deafening crack of the gunshot rang out, the bullet ricocheting off a concrete pillar. The gun skittered across the floor, sliding under a parked SUV. Julian roared in pain and lunged for my throat, but the heavy thud of boots and the flash of tactical lights cut through the darkness. "FBI! Drop to the ground. Now!" A dozen agents swarmed the garage. Julian was tackled to the floor before he could reach for the gun. I backed away, my hands shaking, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I saw Sarah being led out in handcuffs from the elevator bay, her face a mask of defeat. An agent in a dark windbreaker stepped toward me. Sophia Miller? I'm Special Agent Vance. We received your broadcast. I handed him the encrypted key fob. The money is tagged. It hasn't been moved from the primary transition account yet. If you use this, you can freeze it before the shell companies can dissolve. Vance took the fob and looked at me with a mix of respect and suspicion. You took a big risk, kid. You realize you technically committed 3 federal crimes just to get us this data? I looked at the handcuffs being placed on Julian. In this company, the only way to tell the truth was to speak the language of the lie. The fallout. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The Vanguard scandal became the largest corporate fraud case in U.S. history. The news called it the ghost in the machine. Julian and Sarah both were indicted on charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. Because of the evidence I provided, they were denied bail. They are currently serving 25-year sentences in federal prison. The company, Vanguard Analytics, declared bankruptcy within 48 hours. The $500 million was recovered, and under the Whistleblower Protection Act, I was able to ensure that the pension funds, including my father's, were the first to be reimbursed. As for me? The FBI tried to build a case against me for hacking, but the public outcry was too loud. To the people, I was the girl who took down the giants. They couldn't touch me without a PR nightmare. The final scene. I'm sitting in a small cafe in a different city now. I don't wear expensive suits anymore. I have a new name and a quiet life. Sometimes, I look at the news and see another visionary CEO talking about the future, and I wonder what's hiding behind their digital smile. I opened my laptop one last time today. I looked at the ghost code I had saved on a private drive. With one click, I hit delete. The screen flickered, then went blank. The American dream is a beautiful thing, but after working at Vanguard, I learned one thing: never trust a man who isn't there. Marcus Thorne was finally at peace, and for the first time in a long time, so was I.